Hello, I'm Eric Landrum from the Psych Sessions Network and also a Season 3 co host of Teaching Matters, along with co host Dr. Rob McIntarfer from Lincoln Public Schools in Lincoln, Nebraska. We're pleased to bring you this collection of 10 episodes recorded from September 2021 through April 2022. Two episodes in Season 3 featured guests. In Episode 4, we speak with Casey Swanson from Plymouth High School in Canton, Michigan. And in Episode 10, we speak with Ginger Wickline from Georgia Southern University in Statesboro, Georgia. As usual, a wide range of topics are discussed across these 10 episodes. Here is just a sample: research methods, student mental health, hypothesis testing, fictions teachers tell themselves, self care tips, assessment chat, rubrics, AP psychology, IB psychology, high school teachers making connections with college teachers, understanding graphs, accreditation, rather than doing more, purposely doing less, the subjectivity of grading, study skills advice, modality switching during the semester, adapting to natural disasters in one's life, using storytelling purposely as a teaching strategy, the professional demeanor at conferences, improv for teachers, why oh why extra credit, STP's This Is How I Teach blog, hearing the diverse voices of teachers of psychology, and so much more. Please enjoy Season 3 of Teaching Matters from Psych Sessions. Oh, Rob.
But Eric,
So we're back for another episode of Teaching Matters. I'm Eric Lander of Boise State University. I'm here with my pal Rob McIntyre. Is it Lincoln Public School?
it is Lincoln Public Schools in beautiful Lincoln, Nebraska.
And you're at the school district building. What's the name of the building you're at?
My office is in the Lincoln Public Schools district office.
And
It's semi-interesting history. This is the second iteration of the Lincoln Public Schools district office because the first one burned down to the ground
you
over a
know,
late weekend a number of years ago. So in a
buildings
way,
being burnt, trees falling is a real hazard in Lincoln, isn't it?
it certainly is. But like a phoenix from the ashes, or and this is appropriate to talk about an Easter weekend, the district office rose again. We have a brand new beautiful building.
Wow, you're gonna go there. That's a bold move. That's a bold move. All right, so I will tell a sort of Easter related story,
Awesome.
and thank goodness it's not my story. I guess it would have been 2018. In February, Garth and I went out to South Carolina to interview Charles Brewer. And we had an amazing time getting to interview him. One of his colleagues was there with us to help with that, which was awesome. Charles was in assisted living. And so we recorded that. And it was like late February, early March, something like that. And we came home and we released the episode pretty quickly within a week. And Charles passed away about 3 weeks after we recorded it. But in the interim, his daughter, Stephanie, who I believe lived in Canada at the time, had made plans to go and see her father over Easter weekend, and they were going to listen to the episode together. I had found this out all afterwards and talking with Stephanie and she sharing it with me. And Charles died on the Good Friday of that Easter weekend. And I want to say this really gently and politely, but in my email correspondence with Stephanie, with Charles Brewer's daughter, she hinted and made innuendo that my father chooses Good Friday to die. When I was going to go see him, I almost wonder if dot dot dot.
Wow.
And those of us who knew and loved Charles can intimate what she was thinking about there. The dramatic nature that Charles lived his life and gave talks at conferences. And it was really special and adorable how Stephanie presented her father there in that way.
I agree. It's very adorable and special, and I wouldn't now I gotta be careful. I wouldn't put it past him, you know what I mean? He has a flair for the dramatic, and he was one of the best storytellers who I've ever met, and he was especially good at beginnings and endings.
Yeah, and he had this ability to hold stare and to
Yeah.
hold the pause and to hold a stare, and we were talking about before we hit record, what are we gonna talk about? I don't know, what are we gonna talk about? And I think maybe we've stumbled onto a topic of long lost lecture abilities
Mhm.
or, communication abilities that one needs in face-to-face classrooms, because I suspect that some of those skills may be experiencing atrophy in some of our colleagues because they're not in the classroom as much. They're learning new skills with Zoom and Microsoft Teams or whatever online forum they're using. But there are skills about being in a classroom of 300 people and holding attention and navigating slides and the technology and rumbling students to your left and students looking at their cell phones on your right. There's a skill set there.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I one of the key lost skills, I think, that I saw Charles demonstrate masterfully time after time, but I never had the guts to pull it off. Do you remember when he would start and he wouldn't start? So he would be up in front, he'd be behind a podium usually, and he would look out and he wouldn't start. He would just look at us. And something about his demeanor, a hush would fall over the crowd, and he would keep looking. And I never put a stopwatch on him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just stared for a minute or so and then would just start talking.
And you have to wonder, and I saw him at conferences give talks. So he's among professionals, he's among peers who, for the most part, adored him. A, adored him, and B, might have been a bit scared of him,
Mhm.
which I will just say right here and now. I adored him. And for most of his career, I was a bit scared of him.
I could
Uh,
relate to that.
scared of his persona, let's say.
Yeah,
Not scared of him as a human being, but scared
sure.
of impressed by him beyond all recognition. But I have to wonder if you're an 18-year-old undergraduate at Furman University, does that still work when that 70-year-old man walks to the front of the room and stands in front of the lectern? Does that work then?
I would love to know, and this is probably an empirical question. So anybody who's in a classroom who wants to give this a try, please write to Teaching Matters, the podcast, because I now I would love to know if that works. I'm thinking in a high school context, I'm tempted to say no, but it might be so different that it might increase the chances that you're going to get student selective attention.
Yeah, and I think it probably differs by class size. It probably differs by the teacher's gender. It probably
Sure.
differs by their age, their
Mhm.
seniority, the perceptions of the class. Are you at the beginning of the semester or end of the semester? The rapport. I think there's probably a lot of variables going on there.
Yeah, Charles had the privilege of when you and I saw him do that masterfully, just about everybody knew who he was, and I think that was one of the reasons it worked well. I remember being at a high school teacher conference, actually a summer institute, and there was some culture clash or some norms clash between some of the speakers. This wasn't Charles, this was another college speaker who was not used to being interrupted, and there was a culture clash between that speaker and some high school folks who were used to interrupting each other all the time. And we had to do some conferencing later that night because the college person was very offended that the high school folks had interrupt them and called them out on it, and the high school folks felt very demeaned because the college person had called them out on talking during their lecture.
But this was a professional development thing. It wasn't a
Yeah.
was it a formal lecture?
It was not a formal conference presentation, but from the college person's perspective, they'd prepared a lecture for the high school teacher audience, and this was not a discussion/dialogue.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
It was
it's an e
something.
it's an epic misunderstanding by the
Yes.
college professor of what their role was in the middle of the summer of attending this institute or whatever it was.
Yeah, and the high school person could have handled it a lot better too.
Oh, it was just one person asking
It
questions?
was mostly one person, yeah, but so I'm really curious about whether that Charles trick of the I think of it as the eagle-eyed stare out at the audience, how effective that would be now in different contexts.
So I'm gonna I maybe I've shared this in the podcast before, I can't remember, but it's not gonna stop me. Maybe 10 years ago or longer, I had this idea and never pursued it to buy a couple of video camera kits and tripods and things to see and have a grant and to ship them around the country and somehow figure out a way to record people in their natural teaching habitat.
Mhm.
Because we don't unless you're a Bridget Martin Hard who attended Furman as an undergraduate, you didn't see Charles Brewer as a teacher in his natural habitat. I've never seen Jane Hallinan teach in her classroom. I've never
Haven't
seen
you?
Stephen Chu or
Mhm.
Danae Hudson, or I don't think I've seen Regan Gurung teach in his classroom, or Garth Neufeld or Sue France teach in their
Yeah,
classrooms.
yeah.
But, you know, outside of being a guest and sitting in the back, which would be an expensive proposition to fly and to travel, could you my idea had been, could you ship a camera, give instructions on how to run it, have somebody at the institution set it up and record it? How cool would it be to have a video library of these people that and have them, I don't know, it doesn't even have to be the same topic, but that would be cool. Have everyone in the nation record their positive reinforcement lecture or
That'd
their
be
negative reinforcement lecture.
that'd be great. You could
Hear Lizzie
declare
Beers give her negative reinforcement lecture. Hear Elizabeth Yost Hammer give her negative reinforcement lecture.
oh, that'd be cool, and
The
you could
new
declare
ones,
each year could be the different thing. 2023 could be the year of fundamental attribution error, and you just have
right?
many examples from that.
It'd be like the AP reading, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating, Eric. That'd be really neat.
But you could open it up to everybody in the country, right? It doesn't have to be the ones I've just cherry picked of our friends. Why
Yeah.
not have 10,000 instructors send in their video clip and have someone at their institution send in their teaching example? We don't see each was it Parker Palmer
Hmm.
writes about teaching is a solitary art.
Yeah.
We do it alone, as in we don't do it in front of other teachers. Go to our classroom, we do it alone. When we teach on Zoom, we certainly aren't around other people for sure.
Yeah. In K-12, there's a couple different I don't know if they're big enough to be called movements, but a couple different ideas I've heard about to open it up a little bit. One of them is called The Walkthrough. There's a book, it's out of the UK, John Catt Publishing. Um, and a walkthrough is an alternative to typical teacher appraisal. Because in K-12, typical teacher appraisal is an administrator is assigned to you. The administrator drops in once or twice a year, maybe, but it's mostly you meet with the administrator. Here are my goals. Here's what I've done for my goals. Typical evaluation model. Walkthroughs are much more open, where it's a group of teachers who all commit to visiting each other's classrooms. Um, it's like a medical rounds idea. If
Mhm.
you're a med student, you do rounds. And if you're a teacher in training, you do rounds and you go through different classrooms and you observe what happens. But then crucially, you get together as a group and you talk about what you saw in those classrooms, much like medical students would.
It makes a lot of sense.
It could be really cool.
Yeah, I think you have to have some scaffolding and some safety nets so that people aren't doing the social comparison. "Oh, I should be doing that," and
Right.
you have to be careful with praise so
Yep.
that it's a great way to learn what other people are doing and not being stuck. I've got to walk in and I've got to do a PowerPoint picture lecture and I've got to read off of my slide.
Yeah.
And is that the only way this material can be learned by students? Or
Yeah.
can I watch other people and see how they teach it?
I love it. And jumping back to your video idea, one of the things that gets in the way throughs or instructional rounds is just staffing and time limitations. Every kid needs a teacher, and you can't be just marching around looking at other people's classrooms because you have to be in your own.
Yeah.
And videotape isn't a perfect replacement of that, but it could be darn good. I think your idea could be useful for a bunch of different reasons. The other connection that I'm thinking in my head is STP. So STP has some fantastic resources for teachers. Video of teachers doing those fantastic ideas would really flesh it out. So like project syllabus, there are some great syllabi on there. What if we also had on some of those videotape of teachers doing some of the things that are talked about in the syllabi?
I'm just sitting here thinking, and maybe some of this footage exists. Wouldn't it be cool to watch Bill McKeechee
Yeah.
teach a topic? Or I'll take it one further. And again, this might be hard to manufacture. I would love to see some of our fantastic teacher colleagues, how they handle bona fide difficult situations in their classroom, and not to mock it up as we could mock that up as a kind of a as a now I'm gonna have to edit this part because I'm having a memory fog moment. I can't believe I can't remember the word. Hang on, I'm sorry. It's
What's some context that I might be able to help?
so we could mock it up as an improv situation,
Sure.
but I would love to see how does Jane Hallinan handle a live situation where she thinks some cheating's going on a test?
Yeah.
How does Missy Beers handle a situation where she's asked students to put away a cell phone and
Yeah.
they won't do it?
Yeah. In higher ed, do you talk about teacher moves? Is that a universal term? Teacher m
Moves?
Yeah, MOVES.
I don't know.
The context in K-12, and I don't know how many people use it, but we talked about it a little bit in my when you're looking at a lesson plan, there might be different teacher moves you can make at a certain point in a lesson plan based on student reaction or student what students are doing. So if this happens, I'm gonna choose to make this teacher move over here. And absolutely things like cell phones, man, as I've been substitute teaching since we've been in a substitute crisis, I need way better teacher moves for cell phones. I need really good teacher moves if I've offended a student. Let's say you've said something and you're talking about a research summary and a student has a strong emotional reaction. We need a good teacher move in that case so that we can turn that into an educative experience for everybody.
Yeah, I systematically no. I don't think higher ed is talking about teacher moves using that nomenclature.
Mhm.
I think some of the improv work that I've seen does try to give teachers some tools in the toolkit about how to handle those emotional hotbed situations. Like
Yeah.
a student has lashed out at another student, or the faculty member has accidentally said something that has inflamed a situation.
Yeah.
How do you handle that in the moment so
Mhm.
that you can lighten the mood and kind of calm things down? And how do you not make it worse, at least? And so
Yeah.
I think there's been a little bit of training around that, but to what I see, not enough. And I think faculty need, especially, I was going to say face to face, but it can happen on Zoom just as much. You can have students in a breakout room on Zoom and it can happen there. And a faculty, actually, Rob, to be honest with you, even with me, if I'm trying to be funny,
Mhm.
and if I'm not really thinking about it really carefully, trying to be funny is a very small distance from being accidentally offensive.
It totally can be. I've experienced that.
So I have backtracked and apologized profusely in my classroom within the past year. I think I made a joke about somebody being attracted to somebody else in a classroom in the past year, and my joke was made on the assumption of, a heterosexual attraction, and I had a
Sure.
student point out to me, "Oh, you mean if they're straight?" And
Mhm.
I went, "Oh my gosh, you're right.
Mhm.
I apologize. I did make that assumption." And they were right to point it out to me, and they pointed it out to me very politely and very professionally, and I just recognized it immediately, wasn't defensive, and just, oh my gosh, I was just trying to be a little bit funny. And for some people it was, but for a couple of folks it wasn't.
Yeah. And that's a teacher move right there. I would love to hear teachers talk about and then seeing video of it, if you could capture it, would be fantastic. When, as teachers, we get pulled up short during a class, when a student points out something that we didn't realize, and sometimes that's an academic detail, sometimes that's an emotional reaction, sometimes that's an assumption or a bias that we didn't realize we were operating under.
Yeah, and I wanna acknowledge though that this is really super complex when it
Yeah.
happens in the
Yeah.
classroom, especially in real time, because I have a ton of privilege. I have white privilege, I have male privilege, I have seniority privilege, and when I can say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," if that is a younger female faculty member on the tenure track, whatever a different situation, she might feel attacked. She might not want to apologize so much because it's a little bit different situation. So,
Right.
I can say easily, "Oh, I'm so sorry," because I have all that privilege. So it's not as easy as just, "Oh, I was wrong, you are right." Sometimes students are wrong, and
Mhm.
different faculty need to stand up in a different way.
Yeah, teacher moves are highly contextual, which would complicate trying to capture them on video.
Yeah.
Uh,
But I just think I think teachers, if I think I've only got 1 move,
yeah.
but I had access to here's at least 5 different moves,
Yeah.
and I said, "Oh my god, I can never do that one."
Right.
Oh, I had never thought about saying that.
Yeah.
The classic, "I'm 3 points away from an A. Is there any way I can get extra credit? Can you tell me now? Can you tell me now? Can you tell me
Right.
now?"
Yeah.
And having a professor say, "I'm not gonna make this decision right now. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you on Monday."
Yep. It's a good
Even
move.
the teacher move of buying time. Just
Mhm.
because a student wants an answer now doesn't mean they have to have one now.
Yeah. I think it's a potentially useful term. And then specifically within introductory psychology, I think there's some topics that maybe we can predict might elicit some reactions that we need moves for. So what I mean is my history teacher colleagues have a term called teaching hard history. So if you're teaching American history, you're going to come up with some topics. And these are hard topics, not cognitively difficult. These are
Sure.
emotional. You're going to talk about how the founding fathers, in addition to doing all sorts of other things, you're going to teach this idea from the Federalist Papers that is profound and important. And you're also going to point out that this person was a slaveholder and how
Right.
horrifically inconsistent that is. That's teaching hard history. I think in psychology, there are some topics I remember teaching testing in individual differences, and you get to IQ testing. And then when you don't have to scratch too far under IQ testing to come up with some group differences on IQ testing that are hard. Those are really hard.
I think
And
you have to get alphabetically, you have to get to E for eugenics before you come
yes.
across some topics that are unpalatable or lack of palate.
Yeah, frontal lobotomies, different aspects of clinical psychology, some stuff in the social unit where you're talking about implicit bias and you have to get people to reflect on their own bias.
Oh,
That's
sure. Ethical mistreatment, the Hoffman Report. We've got our own past that is,
yeah,
fraught with, deceit, deception, and
yeah.
people who have misbehaved for certain. What
Teaching
was the
hard,
hard
teaching hard psychology might be interesting. Might be an
well,
interesting.
and the teaching hard thing I thought of immediately, which is not linked to psychology per se, which could be a fun generic topic across disciplines. Uh, 2 words. Can you guess?
Not yet.
Extra credit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The extra credit conundrum.
Mhm. And late work is another two-word conundrum.
Yes. Oh, that's a good one. Late work, extra
Mhm,
credit. Yeah,
mhm,
absolutely. So the best thing about extra credit, and I don't know who to give credit to this, it was early in the internet, way maybe 15 years ago I saw it. I wish I
mhm.
could give the attribution. I may have told you this before. Someone posted somewhere in some chat the following notion. Talk about an argument that works, right? I don't give extra credit in my classes because typically the students who want extra credit are struggling already
Mhm.
doing well on what I'm giving you. So
Right.
it strikes me that giving you more work to do on top of that is borderline unethical.
Mhm.
It would be a better use of your time to concentrate on doing well on what's already been assigned
Mhm.
rather than straddling you with extra work, which is just going to make it even harder for you to pass the class.
Absolutely, and if we think of it in terms of operational definition, so if our assignments and quizzes and tests and projects are how we operationally define learning in our classroom, if a student hasn't been able to show learning on what we've done, we're gonna give some sort of different work rather than working with the student somehow so that they could successfully show what they know and can do on how we're trying to define learning already. It doesn't make much sense when you unpack it.
No, and I think the label is part of the misnomer.
It is.
Students aren't asking for extra credit, they're asking for free points because you just nailed it. If there was a better way to teach it where they could learn it easily or more efficiently, why didn't we use that technique at first? There could be an argument made that not using the best technique might be borderline unethical in and of itself.
Why'd you hold that back?
Right. Why'd you have the hip pocket?
Mhm,
And maybe, okay, so maybe we may be getting close to the end, but I will share this. So very early in my teaching career, when I was teaching intro psych, and I think I've said this or written this elsewhere.
mhm,
So when I had to adopt an intro psych book, and I'm just gonna say it, I'm a little ashamed of it, but I will share it with you and our listeners.
mhm,
When I would find the best intro psych book,
mhm.
and I would not adopt it for my class.
Well, interesting.
I would keep it for myself because it had the best notes, the best explanations, and then I would go out and find a lesser book for the students, so that when I was writing my lecture notes as a 26-year-old assistant professor who's on
Yeah,
a tenure track, I had the best book hidden away for me,
that's
and
funny.
my students got a little bit of a lesser book. Now we know, and even 33 years ago, the books were really good, and a
Sure,
lesser book really wasn't that lesser a book.
sure.
But trust me, I the best book I thought was on the market was not the one I adopted.
Yeah, you were using that as a teacher's edition for the book that the students had.
It was indeed for me
Yeah.
the Cliff's Notes teacher edition where I could get the nuance that I needed from myself because I was usually about 8 hours ahead of my students when I was
Yeah,
26 and they were 18 to 22.
I can definitely relate to that this year teaching AP research for the first time. And your mention of nuance kind of circles me back to where we started with Charles. So much love for Charles, and he starts some of the best conversations. But another, we were talking about skills that Charles demonstrated and other people demonstrated that we may have lost or we may need to regain as teachers now. We talked about the eagle-eyed stare at the beginning. The other thing that I think Charles was a master at that I know I need to relearn is not being so dependent on slides during instruction. And I saw Charles do that many times. He often didn't have slides. And then when he had slides, they weren't his notes. He had different notes, and the slides were just there for us to look at. But I often use slides as my speaker note to remind me what to say next. And I don't think that's the best practice.
So if you look at the literature, it's first off, it's not the best practice, but
Yeah.
there are pretty easy ways around that in PowerPoint. If you use the speaker view,
Sure.
you can show one you can show one slide with pictures, but you can
Right.
show the notes view on your screen
Right.
if you want to
Right.
see. That just makes you less mobile though, because you've got to
Right.
stand behind your laptop and look at
Right.
that. The other thing though, and you got to remember when we're seeing Charles at a conference, he's probably giving talks and using slides that he's used for 35 years.
Right.
And
Right.
so he had everything memorized because of rote repetition. I think I remember he got his first job around 1960.
Wow.
What we need a comparison of, which doesn't exist anymore, is that what were his lectures like in 1963,
Yeah.
64, 65? Was he doing that then? I would doubt it.
Probably not. Yeah.
He's probably using handwritten notes or typed notes
Probably.
and overhead transparencies.
Right. So we've come a long way. We started with Charles, and that took us to teacher moves, and we had cool ideas about if we could possibly get videos of teachers doing teacher moves. Then we came back to Charles with a concrete idea.
Yeah, teacher moves that yeah, I don't think there's an analog for higher ed, or if there is, I just haven't heard of it, and
Okay.
I tend to read that literature.
Okay. All right. We'll keep an eye out
That's a
for it.
good one. Alright,
Thanks, Eric.
Rob. Oh, thank you, Rob. I'm gonna go into my radio voice. Thank you, Rob.
Sounds